You are choking on your own bile, clutching your stomach as another wave of agony tears through your bowels like molten iron. The stone walls of Newark Castle blur before your eyes as sweat pours down your face, mixing with tears you cannot control. Your crown, a golden symbol of absolute power, sits forgotten on a wooden table, its jewels catching the flickering candlelight, while you writhe in a bed soaked with your own filth. The smell is unbearable. Your courtiers have retreated to the far corners of the chamber, covering their noses with silk cloths, faces masks of barely concealed disgust. You are King John of England, dying in the most undignified way imaginable, your royal bowels rebelling violently as the very foundations of your kingdom tremble with each spasm. Outside these castle walls, England bleeds from civil war. French soldiers under Prince Louis ravage the countryside while rebellious barons celebrate what they believe will be your imminent demise. They do not know your death will not bring them victory. Only a 9-year-old boy, Henry, will rise to become one of England's greatest kings. For a brief, cruel moment, history shows that power and human fragility are in constant battle. Today, we often joke about misfortune in the digital age, but centuries ago, a king's digestion could decide the fate of nations. Even kings are powerless against their own bodies. Born in 1166, John was the youngest son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, nicknamed Lackland because he initially inherited nothing. Surrounded by wealth and privilege, he learned early how fragile power could be. Childhood for John was shaped by rivalry, fear, and cunning observation. Every smile and command from his parents was a lesson in survival. By his teens, John was already showing the cunning and cruelty that would define his reign. He understood that power required both fear and loyalty, and often, loyalty was bought, not earned. Chroniclers noted his impatience, his fiery temper, and his unrelenting ambition. He learned early that political marriages, manipulation, and strategic cruelty were essential tools in the game of kingship. Yet John's rise was also a story of vulnerability. Being the youngest son, he was acutely aware of mortality, inheritance, and the precariousness of royal favor. This fear, buried deep within him, would later manifest in obsession over control, over money, land, and even life itself. In 1199, John ascended the English throne after the death of his brother, Richard the Lionheart. His reign promised stability but quickly became synonymous with tyranny. He demanded impossible taxes, exploited local populations, and crushed rebellion with brutal efficiency. The Magna Carta of 1215 marked the climax of his failures. A baronial rebellion forced him to sign a document limiting his power. But John's ambition could not be contained. Within weeks, he sought papal support to nullify it, plunging England into civil war. From castles to countrysides, fear followed him like a shadow. His mercenaries, paid in looted wealth, left devastation in their wake. Villages burned, crops destroyed, and countless innocents suffered while John clutched his throne, desperate to assert dominance. By October 1216, John faced military and financial ruin. The French, supporting rebel barons, advanced. John needed one decisive victory to reclaim England. His eyes turned to East Anglia, where taxes had left villages drained and hungry. With a carefully planned attack, he hoped to seize supplies and regain momentum. On October 9th, John feasted at King's Lynn, consuming rich foods that medieval medicine could neither digest nor protect him from. Unknown to him, the town's water, contaminated by heavy rains and troops, harbored microscopic agents that would transform his body into a battlefield. The next morning, he chose a dangerous route, splitting his forces. His baggage train, laden with treasures accumulated over decades, began its perilous crossing of the mud flats of the Washington disaster struck. Quicksand and rising tides swallowed men, horses, and chests of gold, leaving John's strategic hopes in ruins. Even the wealth of a king cannot control nature. The shock of losing his treasure combined with contaminated water triggered violent dysentery. Fever, chills, and relentless pain consumed John as he struggled north to Newark Castle. Every step on horseback sent fresh spasms through his abdomen. Courtiers watched in horror, unable to intervene as the King of England became a victim of his own body. Master Peter, John's physician, tried everything: bloodletting, herbal remedies, prayers, and talismans. Nothing worked. Medieval medicine was powerless against bacterial infection, dehydration, and shock, a stark reminder that even absolute power is meaningless against nature's immutable laws. John's misery mirrored the suffering he inflicted on others. Villages devastated by taxation, rebel barons executed, enemies tortured. All acts of cruelty came full circle as his body betrayed him in the most humiliating way. History judges all, in ways expected and cruelly unexpected. By October 17th, John was barely conscious. He attempted to continue business as king, dictating letters and issuing orders while his body rejected every morsel of food. Spasms tore through him, leaving his attendants to manage the horrifying reality of his illness. He reflected on his life, his betrayals, murders, and relentless grasp for power. He remembered the murder of his nephew Arthur, the starvation of Matilda de Brothers, and countless acts of cruelty. Amid delirium, moments of remorse flickered, but the sheer physical agony made reflection both bitter and real. The chronicler's accounts present a king punished by divine justice. Modern historians see poetic irony. The man who inflicted suffering now faced the ultimate vulnerability. Death, in its rawest form, had no rank. Human fragility and poor leadership remain constant. In 2023, UNICEF reported that 1.7 billion people globally still lack safe sanitation, and millions die from preventable diseases caused by contaminated water. Like John's subjects in medieval England, those suffering today often endure the consequences of systemic mismanagement, corruption, or negligence by those in power. Factories, mines, and industrial sites across the world show echoes of the past. Workers and even children toil under dangerous conditions, often exploited to enrich a few. Power cannot prevent disease, nor can wealth shield from basic human vulnerability. Human vulnerability is timeless. Power cannot shield against nature. History has a way of echoing itself. King John's death was grotesque, humiliating, yet it illustrates a timeless truth: even the mighty are mortal, even the cruel are subject to forces beyond control. The rebellion of his intestines reminds us that no crown can defend against nature's impartiality. His tyranny left scars on England, but his demise also gave rise to stability, a child king, and a legacy of law that even he could not undo. Similarly, today's leaders may wield influence, wealth, or fear, but poor decisions, negligence, or hubris often lead to consequences beyond their reach. From medieval castles to modern corporate empires, human systems are fragile, and exploitation has lasting effects. When leaders disregard health, environment, or the well-being of people, the cost is paid not just in resources, but in lives. The story of John is not just a darkly humorous anecdote of history. It is a reflection on ambition, mortality, and accountability. It warns that cruelty, greed, and disregard for human vulnerability are met with inevitable consequences, sometimes swift, sometimes slow, but always impartial. Power may command obedience, but it cannot defy mortality. Through centuries, the echoes remain. Absolute power may tempt humans to believe they are invincible, but history, like the human body, has its own inescapable authority. The king who died from explosive diarrhea teaches a lesson not of humor, but of humility, reminding us that survival, compassion, and foresight are the true measures of leadership. If you found this story haunting, let me know in the comments what echoes of history you see in today's world. And if you want more dark tales of power, cruelty, and downfall, make sure to subscribe to The Silent Past.